So I think I'll straight away start with the questions. Let's not waste time before the babies wake up. So yeah. So tell me, you both of you, as in, how does it feel like being parents?
I would say it's surreal.
Surreal is fair.
I mean, see, there you go. As soon as you hear one of them cry out, you're like,
It's
okay,
like,
it's super real, and you like get into full parenting gear.
Yeah.
And when they're sleeping like angels, it's like suddenly someone will say, "Oh my God, your daughter looks like this," and it's like, "Oh, I have a daughter. I'm a mother, and he's a father." And that whole surrealness comes in.
Great, great.
my joke answer is, for me, not very much has changed because I've been taking care of her for years.
Interesting. So you want to tell us what you have named them, or you want to still?
Oh, of course, we can tell you.
Yeah.
Our boy is called River, and our girl is called Zara.
Okay.
And for their surnames, we went with Acharya Edwards, because Acharya is my family surname and Edwards
Okay.
is his.
Okay.
And since we're all about equal partnership, equal parenting, equal
Sorry,
representation.
equal partnership. Let me just go see why he's crying.
Okay, quickly go see why he's crying. So yeah, so that's why we came up with, like, we even decided to like join our surnames and have that.
Okay.
Because more often than
What's
not,
their full
like,
name?
so our boy is River Acharya Edwards.
Okay.
And our girl is Zara Acharya Edwards. So
Okay.
for us, everything's about trying to meld cultures into family customs.
Correct.
Like in my family, all the names are Sanskrit.
Oh.
And in Cary's family, all the names are English.
Okay.
So we agreed that one of them will get a Sanskrit name and one of them will get an English name.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the advantage of having twins. Like there's a representation on both sides and it makes life easier.
Mm. Can you tell me the boy baby's name once more?
His name is River.
River. Okay.
Yeah, River Acharya Edwards. So we picked River because like both the families surprisingly have a Kaveri river connection.
Okay. Okay.
Like Appa's entire side of the family grew up on the banks of the river Kaveri in Sri Rangam and all of that.
My parents grew up on, well, very, very close to the Kaveri.
Very close by to the Kaveri. But in his family, there's a nice thing where the grandfathers take their grandsons fishing on the Kaveri and teach them for the first time and talk to them about life and philosophy and what kind of a human to be.
Okay.
And for us, even during like when we had the floods in Chennai, we had like the Adyar River separating us. Yeah. And we were stuck at that point trying to cross with the bridges flooding. And then our babies were conceived in a house by the Adyar River.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of river significance going in our lives and we like them.
Okay, interesting. Okay. So what was your reaction, when you realized that you were going to have twins? Was it double excitement? What was the first reaction of you both?
Well, okay. So there's a little prelude to that answer, right? So I have to give you context. So when we decided that we wanted to, that we were like ready to start trying to have babies.
And as with most people, we had different numbers in mind.
Yeah.
He wanted one child and I wanted two.
And I was very clear that I wanted to only have one child because I'm an only child. Right? And I'm like, I've never, like, every single time I like, all of my friends that have siblings have issues with their siblings and see, I don't have issues with anybody. I'm good. Like, I'm just only child, that works. And she has a sibling. So she's like, no, I want two. And I'm like,
yeah, because it's amazing growing up with siblings. I mean, like, as with all human beings and relationships, you're going to have issues, but you also have great moments and memories, and you have that camaraderie, you have all of those things.
Right. And so, you know how they say that women will go to any lengths to win an argument?
Yeah.
We had twins. There's no argument to be had.
But to answer your question, I mean, obviously we'd taken a pregnancy test before we went in to see the doctor. So at least like we were 99% certain like we were having a baby.
Well, I was completely certain even before the pregnancy test happened, because the reason that I suggested the pregnancy test was because for about like 4 or 5 days before we even did the test, our puppy would like climb up on Sahithya's lap and then like lick her belly. which was not normal behavior. And I was like, I'm telling you, you're
and
pregnant.
she'd curl up and just sleep on my stomach, and that kept happening.
And I kept saying, you're pregnant.
And I'm like, it's a puppy and not a pregnancy test, so it doesn't work like that. She's just being cute.
And then we did the test, and the test came back positive. So we were like super happy. And then
we went in for a scan, and the doctor said, "Oh my God, you're having twins."
And so I was standing on the side where I could see the screen.
Okay.
And well, obviously she's lying down, and the doctor looked at the screen, and she's like, "You guys are having twins." And my response was. And her response,
and he was all like, "Oh," and getting teary-eyed.
And her response, when she said to the doctor, she said, "Can you check again? Are you sure you're not looking at the same one twice?" And the doctor was like, "Yeah, I've done this before. We're good. It's twins." So yeah, and then that was that.
Yeah, he was excited from the first second.
And then we had the hardest like month of our lives because.
You have to wait for like them to have a heartbeat, and for only then do they confirm that it's like a viable twin pregnancy.
Yeah, because so we were clinically pregnant with twins, but we didn't know if we were actually going to have twins.
So suddenly both of us had no nails over 3 weeks. And
and
what is going on? And all of
so,
that was happening.
And so the doctor didn't want us to tell our parents yet, but she was like, "You can't say that you're having twins and then a month later be like, oh, actually it's just one, right? So just don't say anything for now until we see the heartbeat."
So we avoided our parents like plague because we're not good at like keeping secrets from our parents. We tell them everything in our lives.
So we knew for a fact that if we were in the same room with them, or if we had a prolonged phone call, one of us was going to slip.
So for 3 weeks, we avoided them as much as we could until the next scan, and then things got confirmed.
And then once the doctor confirmed it to us, we had a little thing at home, and we had our parents over, and then we
announced it to them.
And of course, my parents didn't get it because they thought we were talking about the dog.
Yeah, his parents were just sitting there quietly and cutely, and my parents were jumping up, and my mom was crying. And then his mom's like, "Wait, what's going on? Somebody explain to us what's going on."
So basically, okay, so the sort of prelude to that is when we got our puppy, right?
Yeah.
Like when I'm talking to the puppy about my parents, I refer to them as Nana and Papa, which is grandmother, grandfather, right? Yeah. And when I'm talking about her parents to the puppy, I say Pati and Tata, right?
So that way, like, she already knows if you say go to Pati, who to go to. And so we were starting to train the puppy with commands.
Right. And so when we were announcing to our parents that we were having babies, what we did was we got 2 coffee mugs, right? Okay. And I wrote Nana and Pop-Up on one set, and then it said established 2021.
Yeah.
Right? And this was back in 2020.
Yeah. And for my parents, we got them like cute Davra tumbler sets, and we did Party, Tata, and customized and wrote it.
And then established in 2021, right? And again, this was 2020. So we had them over for dinner at our place, and we said, we're moving, so we wanted to, since our first dinner in this house was with you guys, we wanted our last dinner to also be with you guys. And since we're moving in a couple of days, this was like a great time to do it. And they were like, "Oh, okay." And we said, we got you something to,
so this is your new
to sort of commemorate the. Sorry?
This is your new place, right?
Yeah,
this is the new place. So this was in the old apartment. And so we gave them the stuff, and they opened it. And my parents looked at it. They were like, "Oh, Nana and Pop-Up." They thought we were talking that because that's what I call them for Luna.
Okay.
Right? So they were like, "Oh, how cute. It's a Luna connection." And then her parents opened up the thing, and then her mom looked at her dad and said, "Does yours say Tata?" And he was like, "Yes." And at that point, she looked up at us and she's like, "Am I going to be one?" And that's when my mom went, "Wait, what? And then and then all hell broke loose, and everyone was jumping and screaming, and there was
the mothers were crying, and the fathers were laughing, and there were lots of back patting and handshaking that was happening. Yeah. So it was nice.
Okay, interesting.
So, yeah.
So talking a little bit about, becoming parents, did you have any apprehensions, when you thought about, having children, without being married? We still live in a very conservative, society. Did you have any apprehensions, or not just apprehensions? What kind of discussions did you have back then, if you could tell us?
I mean, we talked about absolutely everything from birth certificates to how we wanted to raise.
Yeah. We even sat down, with a lawyer beforehand.
The only thing that was different was that we were having these conversations about how to raise our child.
Yeah. And then it became children.
Yeah. So that was the only real difference. But yeah, we discussed everything in. So even before we started trying, we were very, very clear on all of the things that we wanted.
For example, we were very sure that we wanted to work towards getting a birth certificate that had no religion and no caste on it.
Okay.
Yeah, because we find the caste system quite problematic. And in terms of religion, I don't think it's fair to foist your beliefs on children. It was important to us that so we have those columns blank in the birth certificate. I mean, we will educate them about all the different religions, and it's up to them to choose.
Correct.
It's not that we need to force them with our belief systems and how we want to live our lives. I think it's important that we raise them as individuals and not as.
I mean, I think one of the greatest achievements as a
carbon
parent,
copies of us. Yeah.
I think one of the greatest achievements as a parent is to raise children that can make their own decisions, and not have to depend on you for everything, including, hey, Dad, what's my favorite food? If you don't know, I can't help you. That's the thing, and I think it starts small.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It starts with what do you like to eat, and then it goes on to what do you think happens after you die. Right? So
I mean, because for most people, they take marriage for granted. It's a part and parcel of life, and it's your timetable and it's set, and it doesn't even occur to them to question it. Except we both did that quite early on, and we realized it wasn't a great fit for either of us. And nor were we fans of the institution as such, its history, what it represented, and any of it.
And I think that people doing things just because, well, that's how everybody does it. I don't think that necessarily makes for a better world.
Okay.
But I do understand that the fact that, our lifestyle choices are not the norm could potentially complicate things for us. So we did sit down with a lawyer to figure things out on everything from how it works in terms of, anything that comes up, because I think it's better to have all the information and be prepared.
Rather than suddenly go 17 years and then someone's like, oh, no, that's not actually a thing. And you're like,
and I think it's important to know what your rights are, be it legally, financially, and in any sense of the word, because tomorrow, most people don't question the norm, whether we like it or not. By virtue of the choices that we make, most people feel free and take the liberty to question what we do. And that happens very, very often. And between the two of us, I get questioned more than him by virtue of being a woman somehow. Because
I think I think that it's a combination of you're a woman, so you're also much more approachable than I am, and I'm
also nicer to people when they ask me questions.
You're far less likely to tell someone, which is that's my typical response when I think someone's asking me a question that is that's completely out of line. I'll just be like, dude, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, please. Right, like that.
Or he'll be like, I think your nose is where it doesn't belong.
I do not have the time or the patience or the inclination to have this conversation with you, so just take off.
I'm more likely to sit down and be like, can I educate you on why our choices are different? And maybe the next time you meet someone like this, maybe don't phrase your questions like that. And then I'll spend the next 2.5 hours talking to somebody.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Because
that kind of patience just doesn't work.
You are right, because as soon as we announced our pregnancy, we got a lot of questions from people asking us, is it illegal for you to be pregnant?
Oh.
And I'm like, I'm above 18. It was consensual and I wanted it. So it's completely legal. And we had people using a lot of unpleasant language when it came to referring to, our children potentially because they're born out of wedlock. And there were a lot of things about how it's against Indian culture. Whereas I'm like, no, it isn't. There are 8 kinds of marriages, and live-in relationship is one of them.
That's according to the Vedas.
Exactly.
So it's always funny, but the people who come up with like, it's against this culture, it's against that religion,
have never
bothered to read the books. But yeah, although I do think a funny side effect of kind of doing what we do for a living is that there's like these 2 camps in Chennai right now. I find it hilarious. Okay, so there's 2 camps right now. There's one camp that is absolutely certain that this was an accidental pregnancy because, well, of course, we're not married, so it must have been an accident.
You cannot have planned it. Right? Like that thought never crossed their mind.
But then there's a second camp of people who are 100% certain that it was IVF, right? Because I'm 42, right?
And it's twins.
And it's twins, so it must have been. And I just want to get both these camps in a room, right? And just be like, figure it out and come out with one option, right? Because you can't have 2 like literally diametrically opposing points of view.
And I even had people tell me, because I have twins running in my side of the family.
And as it turns out, I have twins running in mine and I didn't realize.
Yeah. So, but so a lot of them are like, really? You have twins running in your side of the family? Show me. I'm like, what do you mean show you? Do you want me to show you pictures of cousins and uncles who are twins? So yeah, we're quite used to getting questions.
Well, as long as they don't start asking for conception videos, I think it's all right.
Yeah. So I think you kind of answered, a couple of next questions that I wanted to ask you, basically about the kind of, how have you managed to bust, the stereotypes, and the kind of questions that you have to deal with on an everyday basis and all that. And so what's parenting according to you? Let's go to that.
Well, I mean, it's not like we have a huge amount of experience in
we have 3 weeks experience in this department.
Yeah, we have 24 days of experience.
As you said, you must have thought a lot about it. Yeah.
At least so far in the 3 weeks, I am infinitely more patient than I was 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, okay.
And that really surprised me.
Also, the things that used to gross her out like 3 weeks ago do not bother her right now.
Yes.
Okay.
Like
I used to have, like, I wouldn't even be okay having conversations about regular bodily functions because I'm like, that's just private. Like, there's no need for us to be discussing all of this. But once you have babies, I think poop and pee count and diapers and spit up and puke is just like everyday conversation in your entire life.
I think for people who haven't yet had children, the thing that they have to remember is that, once you have a baby, shit happens. And it is going to be an orbital part of your life.
And so as to whether it's in a diaper on you or it's your day.
I mean, for Father's Day, I got spit up on, I got peed on, and I got pooed on. Right. So I think like that was
the trifecta
of fatherhood, right? Like right there. And it happened on Father's Day. So I'm like, okay.
So we got him a cake and wrote him like sweet messages. None of that is the highlight. This is the highlight for him for Father's Day.
Because all those things were done by adults, right? This was like literally from the mouth and bums of babes.
So and it also, like, I think with parenting, what we've quite learned, and it's a continuation of what the lockdown and last year, the time we spent is, I think we appreciate the small things and the simpler things a lot more.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, their life at this point is all about eating and sleeping, and that is the entire cycle. And in the middle of all of this, they manage to be cute and smile at things. And so you learn to appreciate these tiny little moments, and suddenly it makes your entire day because they smiled at you or they focused on your face for the first time. Or one of our babies learned to start like turning in the crib.
Already
at 3 weeks.
The pediatrician said, at about 3 months, they'll start doing this. They're already doing it and they're 24 days old, And I'm like,
or one of them will roll over and they'll cuddle or they'll hold hands. And it's suddenly like, oh my God, your day or your week is made.
Yeah.
And so we're learning the small things really make us happy.
But also I think like in the big picture, right? My sort of simple philosophy for parenting is support your kids give them everything that you can and stay the hell out of their way. That's, I think one of the worst things to happen to kids is to have parents who have decided what they're going to be when they grow up, when they're like 4 months old. It's like, you will grow up to be a doctor. Shut up.
No, that is what I call conditional love, right? Because I think people have an idea or a set of boxes that they slot their children in. And as soon as they step out of it, it's like, get back in there, or like, I'm going to withhold my love, or I'll withhold my support, or I'll withhold something else. But then you say your parents are the ones who love you unconditionally. So it was super important to us because we had conversations about what if they, make career choices or don't want to work, or for example, what if they made different choices when it came to...
What if they decided that they wanted to live in the middle of the jungle and just paint forests? Okay, so, I mean, if that's what makes you happy.
We even had conversations like, when are we going to have the talk with them? More importantly, when are we going to introduce them to like, different aspects of sexuality and tell them that it's okay no matter what?
I think
a lot of people wait to have these conversations too late. And for us last year, since we planned on having the baby, the lockdown gave us so much time.
Like one of the
to have these conversations.
One of the like grossest things I think that I've actually seen parents do is the whole shame puppy shame thing.
Yeah.
He said, why would you even put that in a child's head? As a child, right? So like a 2-year-old that's running around the house nanga has no concept of shame.
And more importantly, their home needs to be their safe space where they can do anything and everything they want. You understand that when they step out of the home, they're expected to behave a certain way with other people. Be polite. But at the end of the day, it's a great compliment to parents that you created a safe space for them at home, for them to let loose and be themselves. Try out different aspects of behavior that might not necessarily be okay, but they need an outlet and a space for it. So we spoke about creating a safe space for them, what home truly means when you have children. And we spoke about all of those things. Yeah.
Like I can't honestly think of anything that we didn't speak about. I mean, although like you don't know what you don't know, but
exactly.
But like I can't, like when I go through stuff, I'm like,
we tried to be as thorough as we could about a lot of different things.
So can you tell us, what it was like to be, pregnant during this, the pandemic and the lockdown, amidst this pandemic and lockdown and things like that? And
okay, wait. So here's the thing. So we had decided in 2019, we decided that 2020 was the year that we were going to start trying to get pregnant. And then, no, so it was supposed to be August 2020 is what we said we'll start trying August 2020, right?
Then the lockdown happened and we were like, okay,
lockdown happened, all of that.
Maybe we should wait for things to open up. And then things did open up by the time it was August, September.
So what we decided was, as soon as life returns to some level of normalcy, then we'll start, we'll start time, because the worst thing, because pregnancy is hard enough without having to deal with lockdowns and not being able to get stuff and not being able to travel and all of that.
So the lockdown got over, he started working again, I started working again. It looked like,
normalcy was
returning. So we started trying,
so
and then we got pregnant. And I actually worked nicely through the first 6 months of my pregnancy, because one, I was barely showing, even though I was puking my guts out like 20 times a day. So I'd be hosting events on Zoom, and quite literally I'd introduce somebody, turn off my video, throw up on the side, put out my lipstick and go back to hosting again. And even in shoots, I'll say, excuse me, I'll just go use the restroom. So I shot for Sydney, I shot for Kanakavalli, I did like big campaigns that I shot for, and nobody knew I was pregnant the entire time.
Okay.
And, everyone took like COVID safety protocols, and we worked and we did all of that.
Yeah. And then when the time came for us to, like when it was getting close to delivery, we got hit with the second wave and went into lockdowns again.
But
so
the
it was just like,
man. We got to have the Valagapu at least before.
Yeah.
Because again, like I said, we planned a Valagapu, which is like, which is what the girl side of the family does, a Valagapu Poochutal. And we were going to have a Western style baby shower, which is his family tradition, a month later. Except thanks to the lockdown, we couldn't do that, but we at least had this.
Yeah.
And it was quite nice wherein, all my relatives isolated for 2 weeks so they could show up and do this without masks. And we only had a few friends there because, we had like guest list restrictions, but it was nice. It was a lot of fun. I think for my parents also, it was nice in the sense that, because you know how it is, the way they're raised, they've always dreamt of having their daughter's wedding. So in my mother's words, at least Kalyana Kolaklyado Napate, I was happy. Because she got me in a pattu podava and pumala and jewelry and all of that. So that was fun.
Yeah, and then a couple of days before the Valagappa, her mom came to me and said, okay, listen, so this is not part of like the tradition and stuff, but like, can I just get one picture of both of you wearing garlands? And I was like, why? And she's like, no, because then that'll be like the wedding picture. No, I mean, like you guys aren't getting married, so at least we'll have one picture.
I just want one picture of both of you with the garland for me to frame and put in the house.
All right, fair enough. We can do that.
We can do that much for you. So we got to do that. But then again, like you said, we had a lot of people ask us, how could you have a Valagapu when you weren't married?
Yeah.
But I'm like, it's not hinged on being married. That's hinged on your maternal side celebrating you being pregnant. We've gotten it into our heads that you are only allowed to get pregnant after you've gotten married.
No, in fact, maybe about a year before we actually started trying to get pregnant, I was having a conversation with someone and they were like, so you're never going to get married? And I was like, no, that's just not something that either of us want. And they're like, oh, so then you're not going to be able to have children. And I was like, why would we not be able to have children? And he's like, no, I mean, if you're not getting married, then you can't have children.
And
my
this
response,
person also went on to say, you won't be family, right?
Oh.
So how can you have a family?
Yeah, which makes no sense to me in the first place. But I wanted to really embarrass them. So my response was this, and I quote, man, I don't know how, I don't know what you're thinking, but like I've read the Kama Sutra cover to cover and I have not seen a single position that requires me to do it through the marriage certificate. So I'm not sure what role the marriage certificate plays in the making of a baby. And then they turn bright red and
so
they're like,
this should explain to you why nobody goes to him with like all their questions and they come to me.
Because I will either be absurd or I will tell someone to F off. I just like, like sitting down and giving people straight answers to stupid questions. I just think that makes the world a worse place. It's like, if you have a bad idea, you must pay a price for that bad idea.
See, the difference is like, I think it's also how culturally we were raised quite differently.
Okay.
Like his family expected him to date. I had to explain the concept of dating to my family.
Okay.
And, I had to tell them why I wanted to wear sleeveless in the first place when I was a teenager. So my entire life, I'm used to slowly pushing the boundary a little bit.
I mean, hey, I had to explain why I wanted to wear sleeveless as a teenager. My parents were like, why do you want sleeveless? And so that I could show off my tattoos.
Well,
so yes, you can see how culturally it was a little different.
So I have a lot more practice, I think, talking to people and, reasoning with them, being open to questions and
pushing the
giving them
boundaries.
time. Yes, because I believe on some level, see, not everybody who wants to make different lifestyle choices is comfortable talking about it and advocating for it. More importantly, having the time or patience to talk to people, because most people don't like being uncomfortable. They like everything being familiar.
No, and also for a lot of people, I don't think it ever occurred to them that there were things that you could question. Or there were things that you could just choose to not do.
Yeah.
My
father once said to me when I said I wanted to be in a I was 16 when I said I want to be in a living relationship and I don't want to get married. And here are my reasons why. Because I had like the history of marriage, I had everything. I had this full list written down on paper, like it was a school assignment, and I was telling my parents, and they just thought, it's a phase, you're going to outgrow it. And I remember 2 days after I had this conversation, my father came up to me. How did it even occur to you to think about this? And he's like, yeah, why were you questioning it in the first place? And I'm like, why are you not questioning things in the first place? He said, because I knew growing up, at some point I had to get married and have a family. And I said, I'll have the family. I'm not sure I want to get married. And he's like, I didn't know that was possible. And I found that very fascinating. And I think that's the reason why I actually talk to people, because it doesn't occur to them that it's okay to question, that it's possible and it's acceptable.
Yeah, like a lot of times people just think that things are either illegal or, there's just like, there's a, and I also think that to some extent that just comes from either bad information or no information at all.
No, and which also is how sometimes the
terrible
system
assumptions end up happening.
And
right?
also how sometimes the system isn't in favor of anything outside of the norm. Like, for example, when we went into the hospital, it took us 30 minutes to register because they didn't have the option of writing Miss in front of my name. Because everyone who comes in there that's pregnancy related is Mrs.
Yeah.
So we had to wait while the receptionist had to call someone from the software department and get technical help. So I could register in the hospital as Miss Sahithya Jagannathan.
And then so they put the baby's father's name as Jagannathan.
And I'm like, no, that's my father's name. He's like, the baby's father.
Hello. So, and they're like, oh, but we don't have that option because this name becomes that. I'm like, that's just stupid because.
So you're assuming that one, you have to be.
Now you're being held hostage by software.
You have to be married and you have to be Mrs. and you have to have your husband's surname for it to end up as father's name. And in Tamil Nadu, you have to register your pregnancy. And you get a PICNI number or an RCH number. So when you fill out that form, it's mother's name and it says husband's name. And husband's name ends up as father's name. I had to escalate my issue to the top of the corporation department, write letters saying I'm in a live-in relationship, actually
and
consult a lawyer.
Yes,
I said that's technically me committing fraud if I lie on a form to the government. Yeah. And they're telling me, madam, there are option illa paravailla neenga ivar pera pottu kudunga ungalku appada birth certificate varum. I said I cannot do that. So we had to escalate it, get legal counsel involved, we had to show them Supreme Court precedents, and then we had to write a letter saying the software doesn't allow us, but we're not like committing fraud, we're in a live-in relationship from so long, here is the proof, all of those things for us to be able to register pregnancy.
No, and the thing is that we don't I think we don't realize how deep these sort of like cultural,
moral and societal ideas are entrenched in our legal system and anything
because some
else.
Time ago, this would have been like maybe around early 2019, I was doing a voiceover for, I think it was like the Andhra Pradesh Health Ministry, whatever. And it was like it was a video that was dealing with,
it was a PSA for
wellness,
pregnant women.
It was a wellness thing for pregnant women, right? And there was this line in the video, and it said, I think it was vitamin D3, I think it was, but it was like, vitamin D3 is the most important supplement to be taken by a woman when she decides to have a child after marriage. And I was like, that is, don't claim that this is science if you have your cultural shit in there. And the guy's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, vitamin D3 is the most important supplement for a woman when she decides to have a child. Full stop. There is no after marriage. Are you saying that D3 is not important after marriage? He's saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm like, exactly, remove those two words. Because those two words change the entire sentence. Because one is the implication that you can only have a child. You can only decide to have a child after marriage. And two is the implication that D3 is not important if there's no marriage. So both of those things are wrong. And they're wrong just because of those two words, after marriage. Remove it from the script. Or get someone else to record it. Because I will not record something that is just fatally stupid, And then, of course, they eventually changed the script and I recorded that, recorded it the way that I wanted. But that is, and because of the nature of my job, I tend to see this a lot, but I see it in the form of scripts. And then I correct the living crap out of those scripts. And so I like to think of myself weirdly as like the
you have patience when you don't have human interaction to affect you.
If it's just words, that's great. I can deal with words, and then I can tell people how stupid they are. But if I have to like actually have a meaningful conversation with someone, I just don't have the patience.
It's usually like I'm going to let Sahithya talk to you about this, and he will walk away if he's in a nice mood.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, there are a lot of challenges that come with wanting to do anything slightly outside the norm, and we've been like working to at least come up with some kind of a path for someone else who wants to take this, wherein I'm like, here is what you can do to make your life easier. We struggle to figure this out.
And in fairness, we also got help from people who have done stuff before. Like,
yes.
There was a friend of ours who had already.
We had one friend who had gotten their birth certificate without the caste on it. So we called them, found out how. Then we actually saw a Times of India article about a woman who got religion removed from her thing. Okay. So then I called the reporter who wrote it and said, can you please give me her number so I can find out how she did it? So we can do that for our children. And for example, medical insurance does not cover pregnancy for women unless they're married.
No.
And I don't see, again, what's the connection? It's the same premium, right? You pay the same premium whether you're married or not. It's not like I
pay anything lesser than a married woman.
But there's one thing that they won't cover. And like,
so I'm currently in conversation with my insurance to see if I can do that, because then it sets a precedent for other women to be able to do the same. Good. Because I cannot imagine that every pregnancy in this country is like when a woman's married. You know what I mean? And they need to have coverage.
It is statistically not likely.
Yes.
Let's just.
So, yeah, we're hoping that our struggles just make somebody else's life a little bit easier.
Yeah. Okay. Cary, what do you think about, these days new dads have become, at least I believe so, that, dads have become more involved in raising kids in terms of picking up the responsibilities.
You mean they're actually being dads and not babysitters?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that enough, or what more?
So I think for starters, I think when people want to get patted on the back for being an involved father, I think they need to be beaten with a reasonable sized stick. And here's why. Okay, it's a very simple thing. They are our children. They're not her children that I sometimes babysit. Right? They are our children. And if I expect her to be involved, then how exactly do I get to be like, hey, look, I'm the dad. There's only so much I can do. No, everything she can do, I can do, with the exception of breastfeeding, right? So there is not one other thing. And you know what? I can use a bottle. In fact, we had a long conversation because initially the doctors were like, don't
introduce the babies to a bottle early on. And he's like, but then.
I'm like, but then I can't feed them, right? So what is the point of, so I stay up all night with our babies, right? And so I take care of them from like.
So mom helps out in the morning and he helps
out
at night because he's working during the day.
10:30 at night to 7 in the morning, I'm with the babies alone, right? But the first couple of days, I would have to wake her up every time they needed to feed, or I would have to wake up her mom and then she would feed them with a pala, right? And I'm like, this defeats the purpose of me being up all night. Right? Like, what is the point if I have to keep waking you guys up every time, the babies need to feed? So I'm like, we just need to switch them to a bottle. And that way I can handle the feeding at night and I don't have to wake you up as often. And,
So at least I get a 2-hour stretch as the nap, as opposed to like 30 minutes in 40 minutes.
So I think being involved isn't enough. It's actually like pull your own weight, right? And be an integral part of your child's life from as early as possible. Because like, again, we have like these weird cultural things where, so the father should not touch the baby for 3 months. No, that's because the father is lazy and doesn't want to. Let's not confuse those two things, right? So there's a lot of like cultural stuff surrounding like newborns that like when you look at it objectively, it's like that was literally designed so that fathers can sit and watch TV and not be bothered by their babies, essentially, right? So I think that
not being
aside from like, okay, so let's simply break it up as fathers who are not involved and fathers who are involved, right? I think fathers who are involved and play an integral role in the raising of their children from the very earliest age should get to celebrate Father's Day, and the rest of them should get to celebrate Random Sperm Donor Day, because you don't have a bloody clue what it takes to be a father. That's all. Right? Like, I think that's just let's divide the world that way and we'll be better off.
Yeah. So throughout the night you're up, as in
I go to sleep at 7. So I sleep from 7 in the morning to 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I go to work.
Okay. So you use the bottle to feed them. You don't trouble her anymore.
No. I feed them. It's just he gives me a break of one feed, so I can actually get like
4 hours.
Like a little bit of somewhere between 2 to 4, depending upon how the babies are up that day. Otherwise, it's 2, so it's non-stop. I get done with one, then it's the other, then it's the other. And we realized that I was the one person that was on 24/7, and my mom would be there during the day, he'd be there during the night, and I wasn't getting any rest for me to be able to recuperate and recover from what was happening.
Okay.
And nor was I, because with no sleep, you're not in a mental space to be able to enjoy the small moments. And these times are going to fly by, and I don't want to look back and just be like, I was exhausted and I barely remember it. I want to be fully present and take in everything that happens with the babies.
Although in fairness, like in the last couple of weeks, we have on multiple occasions not known what day it was.
Yeah. Because I mean, we've tried, and like neither of us have gotten any sleep, and
it's like days just kind of blur into each other. I got a call from the studio yesterday, and they're like, are you on the way? And I'm like, on the way for what?
Like,
and they're like, you're recording at 3 o'clock, and I'm like, I'm recording at 3 o'clock on Wednesday, and they're like, yeah, today is Wednesday. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, I'll be there soon. And then quickly showered, jumped in the car and drove to the studio. But I in my head, it was Tuesday.
So which is why, like, as soon as we scheduled this, I set like alarms and reminders on my phone, because we have no sense of time at this point.
It's like everything just kind of blurs into each other.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, it is.
Hey, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ashish.
you.